And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to hashtag It's Your Life. I'm Paul Vadiato, and with me is David Levy.
Yep, David Levy's here.
We are your co-hosts and founders of the Avise Group and Focal Adaptive Solutions for Trauma. Both David and I are full-time spousal caregivers and have been so for many years. We understand how you feel. We also are your expert guides into all things trauma and family caregiving. Join us today is our colleague from Clearwater, Florida, Tiffany Wehrner, licensed mental health counselor. Tiffany is a gifted therapist in private practice and is the creator and host of Moment of Clarity every Thursday and Friday on Tan Talk 1340 Radio. On a personal note, we are both sponsors and contributors to Moment of Clarity and a big fan of Tiffany's. Welcome to the show, Tiffany.
Thanks, Paul. That's such a great welcoming. The show's called Moments of Clarity, but that's okay.
Well, I've had more than one.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yes.
And what time is your show, Tiffany?
I am on, I host a show, Moments of Clarity. It's on Tan Talk Radio, 1340 and 106.1 FM over on the West Coast locally, but it airs on different stations, about 7 total throughout the state of Florida. And you can hear it on the web at tantalk1340.com or visit the Moments of Clarity with Tiffany.com webpage and find out all the information. But it's every Thursday and Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time, 12 to 1.
I love the show. David?
Yep, well, it's a pleasure to have you here, Tiffany. And even though there are no cows on the roof, it's an extra special pleasure to have you. Anyway, we're here every Friday.
We're bringing inside jokes on the show?
What?
We're bringing inside jokes on the show,
yes,
aren't we?
but we don't have a little bell to go ding.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Anyway, that's an inside joke, folks. We had dinner last night at a restaurant, and I told her that cows lived on the roof in order to be able to have fresh beef. And for a little while, I got away with it. But Tiffany's too smart to believe that.
I was second guessing if I wanted to be your guest today after you were telling me stuff like that. So I had to verify it before I came on the show today.
All right. Well, thank you for being here. And as the audience knows, every Friday at 1, we're here right after Dr. Mitch. Dr. Mitch has a great show. He feeds right to us, and it's a pleasure following him. One of these days, maybe, we'll precede him. All right? As Paul said, we bring you real subject matter experts, such as Tiffany, and Paul and I, inside of our own little domain, are subject matter experts. Paul is all things trauma. I'm all things family caregiver, and even though we're both family caregivers for our spouses, we share that role. And so we bring you real professionals. We bring you information that you probably won't hear anywhere else, possibly except on Tiffany's show on Tan Talk Radio. So excuse me, you're listening to us on Boca Chamber Radio.com. You can download the app from there. Tell your friends, family to download the app at iTunes or Play Store. You can also listen to us live on the Boca Chamber website, which I just gave you. Additionally, all shows are live, streamed, archived. We got it on Twitter. And by the way, if you'd like to join us and you've got a question, the number is 561-424-7475. That's 561-424-75. The Avise Group is all about healing and wellness. We work with clients struggling with trauma and mental health issues, complicated family caregivers, and so it goes well beyond wellness. In order to get back to wellness, you've got a lot of complications that have to be solved. And so we like to feel we're your guide for dealing in that within our subject matter, because everybody is seeking a better life, a life worth living. Paul?
Thank you, David. If you're having disturbing thoughts or troubling behaviors, it's usually the result of one or more traumas that might have occurred in your life. Avise Group has developed focal adaptive solutions for trauma specifically to clear trauma, meaning when something is painful or debilitating, it can leave a lasting impression and trigger negative reactions long after that experience has happened. Often these impressions are beyond our conscious awareness, and they're just sort of running in the background, causing disruptions of thought, feelings, and behaviors. Many of our clients, before coming to us, have spent years in traditional psychotherapy and countless dollars without really achieving the results that they had hoped for. Focal adaptive solutions for trauma has cleared the trauma, refreshed their mind, refreshed their outlook on life, and re-energized them with a new perspective on their daily lives. David?
Yep, so today we're beginning a new segment. We call it hashtag self-talk. Excuse me. I'm getting over Tiffany's laryngitis. Each week we'll
It's
explore
like
a new way
Pinocchio,
of...
you lose your voice when you tell fibs of cows on roofs.
Right, cows on roofs.
That's what you get.
Each week we explore a new way of looking at life, a new way of thinking about ourselves, and sometimes when we change the view, we change what we see. When reflecting on our problems or challenges, we use the expression has been, the past tense. This implies to the emotional brain that an ongoing action has ended. As, for example, there has been a feeling of depression, anxiety, or guilt. My thinking on this has been, fill in the blank for yourself. I've been through a lot of incredible tough stuff, have been. My mind has been questioning things, even though I recognize I did what came to me to do, and it made sense then, but now it doesn't make any sense at all because it was the wrong thing to do, and it goes into that has-been category. So when we place troubling thoughts in the past, our emotional brain begins the process of healing. And clearing what has been so upsetting to us is really where we're trying to get to. Paul?
Thank you, David. I think what we'll do is we'll take a short break, and then when we come back on the other side, we'll get Tiffany on and have her an opportunity to talk a little bit about what she does. Again, we invite your calls at 561-424-7475.
The fun doesn't stop here. Make sure you're following us on Instagram at Avise Group and Twitter at Avise Group LLC because hashtag it's your life.
Line up with this audio recording with that video, so anything that's recorded by that's not going to get in the final version. That's just the live stream right now.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving, brought to you by AARP and the Atkins.
And we are back. You're listening to hashtag It's Your Life on Boca Chamber Radio. This is Paul Vadiato along with my co-host, David Levy. And today we are speaking about trauma. We invite you to call in with questions or comments to our call-in line at 561-424-7475. That's 561-424-7475. Our special guest coming in is Tiffany Wehrner, licensed mental health counselor, therapist, and host of Moments of Clarity, in the plural. Tiffany, welcome to hashtag It's Your Life, and thank you for taking time to join us today.
Thank you, Paul and David. Thank you so much for having me as a guest on your show. I'm honored.
Thank you. We've shared a lot of time in front of the microphone on the other coast.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you give us a little bit of your background? Tell us, how did you get into being such a great therapist and talk show host?
Well, those are two separate entities. I think the therapy part started first. And you're talking about trauma, and so that's interesting because that's pretty much what led me into wanting to become a therapist. When I was younger, I guess around, when I just turned 18, my mother passed away from a brain aneurysm, and I had found her, and just starting college, and she passed away, and I was obviously sudden death, and for a teenager just starting life is just really traumatic. And luckily, I was raised with a good head on my shoulders, and with a strong family network. But I still got derailed a little bit off the path, off track, and started probably hanging out with the wrong friends or losing sight of what I was supposed to do. And then I kind of pulled it together and went off to college. I went to the University of Florida. And during my time there, and also locally, I went to graduate school at Palm Beach Atlantic University. And while in school, I had, right after my mother passed away, a grandmother, and then my father. Mm-hmm. And so I not only wanted to help other juveniles, that especially at that age, because when something can affect somebody, especially early childhood and teenagers primarily, that there can be an emptiness, especially if it's swept under the rug and it's not treated and it's not cared for, and you can carry that emotional baggage and it can become more and more and more and heavier and replaced with other feelings such as anger or regret or just maladaptive feelings, rather than changing the therapeutic, perspective of it all. So anyway, luckily I was surrounded by other soon-to-be therapists because I was already studying when my father passed, and I had gone through several areas of treatment, and I realized that through therapy, and there's different areas of therapy that work for different people, I understand that too, but that I saw such a difference and such an amazing perception on life that can be altered because, some things are really, really hard to take, but how we handle them define our character. And I could have victimized myself, I could have fallen apart, I could have done that, or I could have said, oh crap, I'm alone right now and I better get my stuff together or I'm, gonna fail through life or whatever. So I strived hard and worked really hard to help others. And so I have a strong passion because I know, and I've lived it myself, that if you don't heal from it and don't put yourself available to let others in to help you through the trauma, that it can completely derail your life and not let you live up to your full potential.
Now, you have done a lot of work with children, have you not?
Yes, yeah. So primarily my specialization was with children, adolescents, and at-risk youth, and then so I worked with the Department of Juvenile Justice for years, correctional facility, maximum risk, some of the more hardcore children, and that's what I wanted to do, and I did do that for years, and then I branched out and started working with survivors of abuse and adult survivors of abuse, because I started to notice that it's not just at a young age that we can seek help for trauma. There's a lot of people that aren't ready to face what they've gone through, and they think, oh my gosh, well, I guess I'm an adult now, it's too late, it's been too long since it's happened. And those are myths that people often think as they become older, that, it's been too long, or that there's no use in trying to deal with it now, or I don't want to rehash those old memories, those were painful, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But little do you know that that's myth, because pulling it up and rehashing it might not be the most comfortable feeling. However, you'll live forward, moving forward from that point in your life, a lot happier and a lot lighter and freer and happier. And it's not an easy task to do, but in the long run, it's the best. That's the best way to go about it, is to address the problem and not try to run from it.
It's just not going to go away on its own.
Right.
I mean, we'll function and we'll see things happening in our life, we'll wonder where it came from, but underneath all of that, consciously or subconsciously, is that trauma. Tiffany, you talked about recovering from abuse. I know you authored a book. Tell us a little bit about the book that you wrote.
Well, it's a documentary. It's nonfiction, and I'm not a survivor of abuse myself. I was with several clients at the time where my caseload in private practice had several survivors, and I wanted to stay on my A game as a therapist, and so I was researching other curriculum in order to figure out how to make sure that I'm on the most, updated ways to help somebody process through it, and I really couldn't find much. And so that's kind of a fault of mine when there's a lack of something, just like, I'm going to go do it. So I had a really strong group of clientele that I called my survivor group, and they worked with me. They let me document and then we had a survivor group. I didn't charge them for the therapy, and they let me document their stories. And not only that, but we would come up with curriculum, and then they would come back and we'd all work together and say, well, this really worked, but this I actually got more from and everything. So it's a self-help book, and it's free to download on the momentsofclaritywithtiffany.com. So it's a self-help for adult survivors of sexual abuse or incest and from childhood. So, but it does work on several levels of other abuse and trauma. It doesn't have to be just sexual abuse or trauma.
Okay, so
incest.
It's a free ebook. And how do folks download that book if they'd like a copy to read?
To visit the momentsofclaritywithtiffany.com. It's my webpage for the radio show.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just momentsofclaritywithtiffany.com. And on there, it's a lot of good information, a lot of good blogs. You guys are on there. It's great information on there. So
yes, actually, there is.
Yes, there is.
Now that they hear that they're on it, it's great information.
Oh, come on.
It got better.
It just got really A+.
Right.
Now that you're on it.
Did you find it unusual? I don't mean unusual in the sense of, you weren't expecting it, but when you look back at your survivor group, unless it was selected for that reason, were you surprised at the predominance of folks that have been through sexual trauma or incest?
It's very common. And then it was featured on the cover of childabuse.com.
Okay.
And I've been featured. It was supposed to be featured just for the month of January.
Right.
It's still featured. I'm still featured on the cover where you can download my book there too.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's been downloaded between 40 to 60 times a week. And that's how it shows that how many people want help for that are afraid to admit because of shame and guilt that stops them from seeking help.
Right. Once they downloaded it, did you find an increase in people contacting you? In other words, once they looked at your documentary, as you put it, that then they sought out the professional that put it together?
Absolutely. I have a lot of clients in my private practice that do seek me out simply because they're trying to find relief after holding that in for so long and carrying that. The shame and guilt is the hardest part, especially after the aftermath of the trauma, is more damaging at times than the traumatic experience itself.
Once you realize what happened, it can be far more damaging than the event in the moment.
Yeah, some people don't realize that carrying trauma, it's like holding up a bottle of water forever, and you can hold it up and say the water's, metaphorically trauma.
Right.
And you're holding it up and you're holding it up and you're like, I'll just take it on my own, whatever. And then you have to do something else, like other actions, daily actions, sweep the floor, vacuum, whatever, but you're still holding this trauma and you're like, oh, if only I didn't have to carry this trauma with me. And then eventually your arm starts to hurt, you're getting physical symptoms because you've got this emotional, traumatic thing in the back of your head, and everything else is just double hard because you're carrying this that when you could just set it down or get help or learn to process it, let go of shame that isn't, in most cases, it's not theirs to carry. So the shame and guilt is, especially if it's a childhood trauma or things of that nature or survivor guilt or things, it's not their guilt to carry, and it's self-blaming, and it's often when they find the ability to forgive themselves as well as others.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying forget, because it's something that you can't forget most times, but to look at it from a different perspective and to be able to forgive and let go of the shame and acknowledge it. That's number one. Acknowledging it, that it happened, and realizing that it doesn't define who you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's
That's probably the most important thing.
Right, and then you can start to move forward and go through those processes. But that's that's one of the hardest things for someone to take that first step. But once they do, and I've seen some people really transform and, grow into enlightened, empowered. They say they live in a bubble.
What was the problem, right?
Well, no, they understand, but they're growing outside of their bubble. Fear of the unknown is and then be able to trust others that they didn't trust before. Be able to make eye contact with people in a grocery store, talk to a stranger and say hello, how's your day? Things like that. When there's a history of abuse and things, that splinters the psyche, and that people can't even as adults do that.
Fascinating. Now, the second part of the question was, when did you decide to put it on the radio or put it into the media?
The what?
When did you decide to do a radio show, and why?
Oh, well, I have a counseling center, and my goal was to have it in a comfortable spa-like environment, so it end the stigma on mental health. People would come in and hopefully find counseling kind of I'm going to go see my counselor, get my nails done, go to the gym, see mental health, kind of just like physical health, emotional health, mindset, eat well, sleep well, mindset. And I had joined the Chamber of Commerce in Safety Harbor.
Okay.
And I know we're in Boca Chamber of Commerce.
But that's all right.
But anyway, so the ribbon
All
cutting.
Chambers of Commerce are kissing cousins.
Right. So on my grand opening, during the ribbon cutting, Tan Talk Radio was there, and after my speech, they asked me if I would host my own show.
Oh.
And I had been considering doing that anyway, or speaking out, because I was taking on about 60 clients a week, and it'd be a lot more effective to be on the radio and reach
So
as
how
many
long have you
people.
been on now?
January would be 3 years.
Wow. Very good. And obviously there's never a loss for things to talk about.
Absolutely not. Most of the time, every show I have an exceptional guest that has some sort of inspirational story, and it brings hope and survival to others through their story, their challenges, and it ranges from celebrities to book authors to stay-at-home moms to advocates to survivors to...
Have you moved up from kids to, 20-somethings, millennials,
Right. No, I do family counseling, and as well as, my specialization is probably with adolescents. I spent most time with them, but through private practice, I do work with families, and before that, I was specialized in substance abuse and things of that nature. I think that as well as I started getting a lot of clients in the LGBTQ community, and I'm a supporter of helping them through their challenges as well.
Okay.
Tiffany, last night over dinner, you told us about the guest that you had on yesterday's radio show, which is really a remarkable story. Share a little bit about your show yesterday. Very touching.
Well, okay. Thought you wanted her on your show. You sure you want me to do that?
Well, it just was a very unusual but timely, unfortunately, set of circumstances.
It's indicative of the trauma that people are facing, and this is as current as it gets.
Right.
Okay, so my guest yesterday was a woman named Valerie Quintanilla, and she had she lives in Texas, and her family had been strongly impacted and killed during Hurricane Harvey that hit Texas. Bayou broke. They were in a cargo van. They were trying to get away, and her aunt and uncle and 4 cousins, children aging from, I think it was 6 to 16. They all drowned, and the bayou had broken and swept the van away 1.5 miles to 2 miles away. And there was no way the Coast Guard or anybody could get to them until like the water receded, and it was like 1.5 weeks to 2 weeks later they could finally reach them. And the tragedy of just hearing that, and how natural disasters, and it's going on all over the place today, nowadays, it's just kind of like, we were just talking, like, that tragedy, it's like Hurricane Harvey, which wasn't that long ago, but it's like, feels like so like yesterday, because we were going through some troubled times.
Come together between Harvey, Irma, and Maria in Puerto Rico.
And Puerto Rico by itself, and then the fires out in California. Looking at people standing in front of their house, and 5 minutes later the whole house is incinerated, and they were lucky they got away. But that's
the sinkholes that are happening in
right.
Land O'Lakes, like just like.
And then last night, over dinner, Paul says, "And you know about the volcano that's coming up underneath Old Faithful Geyser in Yellowstone?" And I said, "Paul, great, What more do we have to look forward to?"
Got to watch out for those rolling thunderbolts.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, Paul, I think it's probably time for us to take a break. And if you agree, we'll go to a break, Sam, and when we get back, we'll have more with Tiffany.
We'll announce the asteroid that's heading toward the world. More after this.
More right after the news.
And we are back. You're listening to hashtag It's Your Life on Boca Chamber Radio. This is Paul Vadiato, and along with me I have my co-host,
David Levy.
And we are here today with a special guest visiting from the Clearwater area.
Clearwater, Tampa, St. Petersburg.
There you go. Tiffany Wehrner is a licensed mental health counselor. She is the creator and she is the host of Moments of Clarity. And we're speaking about trauma today and talking a little bit about her work and her show. David and I are
got a caller.
Very pleased to be part of that program.
You got a caller.
Okay.
Ready to bring it up?
Okay.
Let's bring it up.
All right, we have a caller, Paul. Sam, who's on the phone?
It doesn't say. It's also not answering it. Why is it just ringing? I'm going to figure that out and get back to you guys on that.
Okay.
It's just ringing and they're not able to answer.
All right, we have a caller waiting in the wings.
And that number was 561-424-7475.
Right.
561-424-7475.
Do you hear someone?
It's just ringing in our ears.
Can you
I'm
connect it?
fixing it. Just keep going.
Just
All right.
ringing in our ears.
Hello?
No, the call
Okay.
dropped.
This is technology, hashtag technology telephone.
It says, please stand by, and then it goes to a busy signal.
It's weird.
Okay.
I'm fixing it.
Well, hopefully that guest will call
And
back in.
we apologize for making them wait. We're still getting through the technology side of Boca Chamber Radio, and we apologize to the caller. Please keep trying. We'll see if we can work it through. Tiffany, tell us a little bit about your typical client. What type of issues are they bringing to you?
Hello?
Well, there's never a typical client.
Hello? No, they dropped.
It's
Keep on. Just
everybody's
try to figure it out.
individualized, and everyone handles situations uniquely and to the best of their ability. And so I don't know. I have a private practice in Safety Harbor. I've worked with more in I guess intense clients previously. Right now, with the millennial and there's just so much self-care, and I think that people are learning that it's okay to take care of ourselves, because we can't help others unless we really take care of ourselves first. And that you're not going to get anywhere by overstressing and pouring from an empty cup when it comes time to helping others. So I know that, there's a lot of people coming in just for couples communication or stress at work or learning how to cope with anxiety or depression or learning how to cope with a teenager that parents of teens.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
There's so many different avenues of how a therapist can really be there for you and help you through it. And a lot of times it's just change of perspective that can really, from seeing it from a different point of view and realizing that not everyone sees the world through the same eyes. So the perception on the same situation from different people can be very, very different. And to not think that you're being judged or criticized or that there's a stigma to go talk to somebody because it could be an everyday life problem. And a therapist talk therapy could really help you get through something like that. And it could save marriages. It could save blood pressure issues. It could really help somebody get through some things or, reconcile problems at work and help their job performance as well. I think more employers would see higher numbers if they offered mental health as part of their...
I agree. We finally got our caller, so Sam, why don't you put him through?
We have Nicole on the line.
Hi, Nicole. This is Paul Vadiato. Nicole? Hi, Nicole. Yes, hi. Welcome
can hear.
to Hashtag It's Your Life.
Hi, Nicole. Nicole, that's really nice. Thank you so much for calling in and saying that. That means a lot.
This was a paid commercial.
No, actually.
I'm only kidding, Nicole. I know you meant it sincerely.
Yeah, and but yeah, so pushing trauma and negative things under the rug, though, was holding you back from reaching better things in life, though. Wouldn't you say? Because a lot of times with trauma and things in our past, if we don't allow ourselves to let go of that and to heal from it, there's no room for positive things to come into our life. And have you found yourself being able to find more happiness and everything since you've been working on that? And being able to forgive past hurts. Being able to let go of past hurts and learning to forgive is one of the key aspects to that. Mm-hmm. And it's really up to you, and you have to have gratitude and make that choice. But it doesn't disappear overnight, and sometimes trauma can resurface. So we have to make a conscious decision to make sure that we continue to use our coping skills and avoid triggers every day.
Sounds like you were left with a very helpful tool bag that you could reach into as difficult moments come along.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that, and kudos to Tiffany for getting
I'm really
there.
proud of Nicole. She did all the hard work, and thank you for calling in and sharing that. It means a lot to me.
Nicole, before you drop off, just a quick question for you. For those that are at the beginning of this journey who are feeling the pain, speak a little bit, if you will, to making that first call and reaching out and asking for help. So many people know that things aren't right and they just sort of hesitate.
From the stigma.
Yep.
Wow, that's great advice.
Yes, it is. And hard earned. Tiffany, you have a final word for?
Well, and also being receptive on being willing to face the fear that a lot of people have been avoiding and not wanting to rehash the painful past in order to move forward. And that is because of the shame and the guilt attached to whatever that is causing them to not be able to forgive themselves. So that, I think that really holds strong for people to hesitate on reaching out for help because of the fear of not only being labeled or being seen as weak or any of that, but they don't want to have to face something that was painful from their past. They'd rather just ignore it or move forward, but they're doing that with the baggage of, things that will end up with compounded triggers. Yeah, it ends up compounded. So if you're carrying something that just makes you irritable or angry, or you have a trigger for because of not seeking help or finding forgiveness for that, then when something else comes along, another tragedy, like we were just talking about Hurricane Harvey or something else over and over and over again, then you've got like 3 tragedies that you haven't gotten through. Absolutely.
Well,
And
Nicole,
it's never going to make anybody happier to keep this self-destructing.
now that you found us, we hope that you'll join us every Friday here, right after Tiffany's show on Boca Chamber Radio, and I know you'll be continuing to listen to Tiffany's show, Moments of Clarity on Tan Talk. Thank you very, very much for calling.
Yeah, we
She'd probably make
appreciate
a good guest on your show one day too.
I think we should have
Right.
a conversation about
An
that.
abundance of wealth.
Yes.
Knowledge. Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks.
Thank
She's
you.
such a
Well, thank you
supporter,
again.
and
Thank you.
yeah, she would make a great guest.
So,
Thanks, Nicole.
Tiffany, you spoke earlier. Thank you. Tiffany, you were speaking before about physical health and emotional health and mental health. People who are not sleeping, people who are having flashbacks, people who are struggling through their days with low energy and just not feeling themselves. What do you say?
Why don't we hold that answer? Because Sam is letting us know we're overdue
Time for a break.
break.
Okay, that's
All
good.
right.
Now you can catch our show on the go. Tune in every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern for hashtag It's Your Life on the Boca Chamber Radio app and Periscope.
And once again, we are back with hashtag It's Your Life. Paul Battiato and
David Levy.
our guest is Tiffany Wehrner, licensed mental health counselor, creator and host of Moments of Clarity. Tiffany, before we took our break, we were talking about manifestations of physical health that are not working. I'm not sleeping, I'm feeling irritable, people are avoiding me, and it really is connected to a lot more. The emotional, the mental health. Talk a little bit about that, if you would, please.
Well, I think we all have to be emotionally and mentally stable and well in order to be able to think clearly and function at our highest level of potential. And a lot of times our mental health gets in the way of things, especially if we're not eating or sleeping or living the right way or taking care of our mental health. That can lead to a lot of physical ailments. You know, anxiety can lead to stress and obsession, compulsions, things of that nature, and cause people to call in sick more often than they would if employers were more understanding. I strongly believe like we all need a mental health day, you know, just as a paid day off, just to keep people from feeling overwhelmed.
And maybe a mental health checkup.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show. I think that I think everyone should be mandated to have one every year. But so if we're not feeling our best mentally, especially if it's anxiety or depression that's being undiagnosed or someone's in denial of it or untreated, it can really carry through the day, and it's a challenge all in its own to get up and go to work and live your life and take care of kids or family and everything like that. But if you're carrying symptoms of even situational depression or anxiety, then it's extra hard and it's an extra challenge. And a lot of people don't give themselves enough credit of how courageous it is to face every day while suffering with depression or with grief, loss, everything, to get out of bed and do normal daily functioning while carrying symptoms. And like, depression's not always suicidal ideation or things of that nature. It can feel physical symptoms and like sluggish, where you feel like you have the flu or things of that nature. One day I'd love for our world to be able to understand what we're talking about when we go to work and someone says, "Oh, are you getting over the flu?" No, I feel like I'm going through a touch of depression, and they understand, like, "Oh, sorry to hear that. You must be feeling sluggish, or you must be not sleeping well, or you must be not, thinking clearly. Maybe you should go home and rest, or or go see your counselor. But it's not. If we have a toothache, someone goes, go see the dentist."
You didn't have a good night's sleep, so your tooth hurts.
Well, it's like nobody's like, everyone's so afraid to say, are you suffering with your mental health, rather than, are you, like, what's wrong with your teeth? I don't know. Like, it's just.
Well, I think people are on very shaky ground if they're not skilled in it the way you are, or been successfully through a course of treatment to get into that mental. So when they start saying, well, you're not sleeping well, you're not eating well, what's troubling you, etc., it's more that they're staying within the boundaries of what their perception is and what they feel comfortable in saying,
Well, and that's part of the stigma that's attached to it. And then through education, the more we talk about it, the more desensitized the whole topic comes.
Well, I found that with my support groups for caregivers, they all walk in with an incredible level of guilt, anger, and resentment. And a lot of the guilt is because they don't think they're doing a good enough job. Because nobody in society has ever said to them, here's what a caregiver should do. Here's what you don't have to do. Or, just getting through the day is great because there's nobody running out to put a gold star in your book. And so some of the first things that I see, especially with a group, as you get absorbed into people that have been through or are going through some of the same things you are, the first revelation is, oh my God, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person that this is happening to. And once that kind of comes about, you begin to be able to walk down a trail of then defining what their broader issues are as caregivers, because all caregivers have broad brush issues, but then when you can get into some of their specific ones that they just don't have to, you can't be your own AWAC and be a caregiver. You can't see yourself from a distance. So
just the altruism attached to being a caregiver, you deserve a gold star just for, being there for a loved one.
Right.
And there's no perfect way to do anything, it's
right.
You do what you can with the resources that you do have.
Well, that's it. You do the best you can with what you have at the time.
And the
you
intention,
have to do it. Yeah.
if the intention is good and wholehearted, and you're doing what you think you can, if something goes wrong or if something isn't up to par, it's not the caregiver's fault.
Right.
It's caregiver doesn't mean you have a medical degree or anything
Right.
like that.
Your Mother Teresa or Florence Nightingale melded together.
Well, also, David, if somebody is struggling with depression, anxiety, they're not sleeping, you could pretty much bet that it's affecting the family that they're attached to as well. And when we get into some of these issues that someone is struggling with an issue, part of that treatment really needs to include the family and have them have an opportunity to see what's happening with them, to touch base with them, and give them some coping tools, some problem-solving skills, so that they're going to be able to get better also. And when that person returns and they're feeling better, that the relationship doesn't slip it back into old patterns.
Right. Well, that's always difficult. You've got to reinforce the good, so you don't wind up with the slippage, and that's just having better confidence in yourself and a good concept of self-esteem. And the other thing is expectation management. if nobody told you what you were supposed to do, then you put the bar all the way up here, and you can never get over it, and all you are is frustrated and angry that you didn't perform to a self-perceived standard that isn't realistic because nobody bothered to tell you the reality of what you're doing. You know, and that, I mean, that's what I find in the caregiving world. But if you don't manage their expectations, then they think they have to be superhuman individuals, and nobody can be.
Well, the best way to go into a situation is to go in without any expectations, and just keep growing on the positive ones that you achieve.
Well, most of them wind up. I don't usually see caregivers till they've been at it for a year and a half. They're frustrated, they're burned out, they can't go back to work, they're losing money, their emotional and social relationships are falling apart because of this extra task of taking care of a husband, a spouse, a special needs child. And it takes a whole different, idea that this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon, and that you're going to work at it incrementally. And you're not going to see the same things every day. The one thing about caregiving is that whatever was going well today will not be going well tomorrow. Not necessarily for you, but caregiving.
You never know what you're going to wake up to.
Exactly, because there's no playbook for it.
It's a hand in
Well, you
hand.
deserve a gold star for just waking up every morning, not knowing what to expect, and
saying,
and taking it head on.
And you were talking a little while ago.
I'm going to get you a book of stickers. I'm going to send one to you every week.
Right,
So you can put it on your little chart and remember that you're a star for doing that.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Well, this has been an incredible hour. We thank Tiffany so much
you
for
were
coming
great.
over and being part of our little
It's
soiree
been
today.
fun.
Tiffany is,
Thanks for having me.
it's our pleasure. We want you back again.
Yeah.
Moments of
Anytime.
Clarity with Tiffany Wehrner on Tan Talk 1340 Radio. You can listen to her every Thursday and Friday at noon at www.tantalkradio.com or www.momentsofclarity.com or live stream on Twitter
Moments of Clarity with Tiffany.com.
with Tiffany.com.
Paul will get that eventually.
Eventually.
All right, so Paul, who do we have as a guest
Next week here at Boca Chamber Radio, we're going to have our primary therapist with Avise Group. Going to be a very interesting hour with Janice Moncourt here to take
She's
your questions.
amazing,
Yeah.
and she's got such a different take on therapy and trauma. I definitely would advise tuning in, and I'll be listening.
Thank you.
Very good.
Make it a great week, everyone. Be kind and be patient. Remember, you can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Avise Group. This is Paul Vadiato.
And David Levy.
Have a great week. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you so much, and it's great what you guys are doing here. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.